2019. 2019, so I've been a member since then, one of the earlier members.
I'll go next, I guess. I don't know what order we're going in here. I'm Jason Kierstead. I'm the other co-chair of the OCA, one of the original founders of the organization back in 2019. My background, long background in cybersecurity, was with IBM Security for a very long time. Left there as CTO threat management a couple of years ago. Did a stint at Cyware, threat intelligence management company. I'm now at a company working on generative AI agents for cybersecurity. So now firmly in the AI hype bubble. The OCA is still very much open security and collaboration and community is my passion. I really think that it's one of the things that the industry needs to, it's constantly challenged with, and we constantly have to keep nudging everyone to share and collaborate more. I've got a lot of personal feelings and thoughts that I've talked about at many different conferences and events about why I think there's kind of like cultural issues that inhibit our collaboration in cyber. And I think that it's kind of, one of the things that if we could all just do a little bit better, we would really be able to take the fight to our adversaries. So anyway, sorry, I'm ranting. Let me hand the mic over to Terrence. I'm just reading down my screen here in whatever order people are in. Terrence?
Sure, I'm Terrence Driscoll. It's my first meeting. I recently joined Cyware as their Chief Information Security Officer. Before that, I was at JP Morgan Chase. I ran the security and controls assurance team, which included security architecture, red team, pen test, tech resiliency, and I ran the security and technology control stack there. I did a previous stint there. I built their threat intelligence organization after they had their incident in 2014. It was helpful in bringing their SOC back into an intelligence-driven mindset. I've been a CISO at a private equity firm before that for McAndrews and Forbes was a holding company. I was at PayPal for a little bit. And then beginning of my career, I was at Lockheed Martin, where the first half I worked as a system engineer in the intelligence community. Then the later half, I worked in cybersecurity, both on the internal team. I was part of the group that helped develop the kill chain. And then I was an intel analyst, built the threat intelligence team, and then worked on the government side. Did some project with DISA, transforming the military SOCs into intelligence-driven defense, and did work with our international and commercial clients as well. And I'll turn it over to Duncan.
Hi, everyone. Duncan Sparrow. S-Fractal Consulting was a founding member of the OCA. S-Fractal Consulting is just a code name for Duncan because he's an old retired guy. I'm pretty sure I have seniority in cybersecurity on everybody here. I've been doing it since 1990 when I was a hacker for the US government in the first Iraqi war. My claim to fame is I coined the term SOC and built the first one way back when. That's how old I am. And I retired as AT&T's chief security architect over a decade ago now. And so I'm really into cybersecurity automation. It's my sort of retirement hobby, and that's basically what I push. I'm very involved in CASP. It's sort of my brainchild. I'd be very involved in PACE, but no one else seems to care, so that'll probably be a topic for later in the agenda. I co-chair OpenC2. I'm one of the early STIX people. I'd be in Geneva arguing with the Russians and Iranians about STIX right now, but I'm trying to phase into retirement more. So the ITU is one of my things I just gave up. Back to whoever's next.
I can continue. So, hi everyone, I'm David. I work as a Chief Scientific Officer at Sequoia. Sequoia is a French company. We are an editor, we develop our own product. On my side, I have a long background in cybersecurity. I started to work in this field in 2001, always worked in this domain. I led two different certs in France, and 8 years ago I co-founded Sequoia, and today I have let's say we proposed a project in OCA which is named Open XDR Architecture, and the goal is to federate different products to work together into a collaborative goal. I have little time, so sometime I'm not available, let's say, to participate to the different OCA events, but I try to catch up as much as I can. Maybe Eric for the next one.
And my audio issues continue. Hopefully you can hear me all.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Pinnell. I'm a senior cybersecurity engineer with Center for Internet Security, CIS. My focus there is running the group in the community that develops secure guidance for big Unix and Linux systems. Prior to that, I worked for the DoD and the United States Property and Fiscal Office, both operationally and doing cybersecurity from about 2004, mostly with big Linux and Unix systems, and to a lesser degree Oracle databases. So that space I came out of, I'm still to this day a big proponent of open community, and really, as I think I heard earlier, would love to see more focus on collaboration. I think it would make everyone's life a lot easier, especially when we try to come up with things like good guidance across different technologies. And I don't know who's next on the list, so.
I think maybe we can throw to Claudia, and then if Utkarsh is able to connect, maybe, and we'll see if anyone else turns up in the meantime as well. So Claudia, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, just briefly. So I work with Oasis as a program manager, and I've been working with OCA since 2021 when I joined Oasis. So I'm not a domain expert, but I hopefully help you to be productive with what you do. And so any questions you have about Oasis or OCA, throw them my way.
And Utkarsh, can you hear us there? You're able to give a brief intro?
Yes. Just give me 1 second. I'm just turning my video on. Just give me. Sorry. All right. Hey, everyone. So I'm Utkarsh. I've been working with the Cyber now like 8 years. I have joined as a developer, now working as a software architect in Cyber. I'm a big follower for Sticks and Taxi, and have implemented into multiple solution and working with the ISACs over here to implement onto that. And recently I have joined the cybersecurity village with Jason, and I really liked and looking forward to contribute more to the community.
Cool, thank you. Well, I'm actually very pleased we've got a decent turnout today. I know we've had some of these meetings have been a fair bit smaller, so thanks everyone for coming. And yeah, seeing as I sent around the agenda, I'll just check before we begin. I know Duncan had a topic to discuss, which is what's the future of PACE. But just before we get started, does anyone have any other agenda topics they would like to add? Okay, cool. So yeah, I wanted to start with just a review of the OCA goals and focus. And I think certainly Jason's passion comes through pretty strongly as one of the founding members of the original large sponsor. And yeah, I share the same enthusiasm. We had a chat on the floor at Black Hat about all this, and I think really the overarching goal is the idea of interoperability. So certainly, We've seen, decent interoperability with, to your point, Utkarsh, with Stix and Taxi. I think having, automated transmission of CTI is now very commonplace. And that's been a big success. And I think it's largely because it's a platform or a vendor neutral format. So that's really, I think, the key difference here is that we are about vendor neutral formats that exist in the commons, as opposed to being an open source format that's owned by a vendor and can therefore be subject to, to controls or license changes or whatever. So that's really certainly my perspective on it. Obviously, I'm keen to hear other people's take. And really, I see the interoperability serves at least two purposes. One is that it benefits the customers. So I think all of us work for vendors, and our customers get a better deal if they can plug and play the best of breed components that they want to achieve the ideal security architecture that they need for their business. And I think the antithesis of that is being locked into a single vendor because the components don't talk well with others, and you've got basically platformization with compromises made in security architecture where you can't pick best of breed. And certainly a big part of my interest in this is, as a small vendor, that sort of platformization is quite risky for us because we get locked out of opportunities. Whereas if this interoperability is widely available and people know about it and expect it, then I think small vendors have more of a chance at getting involved in the security architecture. And I think that stimulates innovation and competition and leads to much better outcomes for customers and for the industry as a whole. So that's my take. But yeah, keen to hear. I know, Jason, I know you've got some strong views. Did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. And just for the background of why we're kind of, talking about this for everybody here, right? Like we're, start of, fall season, like we said at the beginning of the call, this is kind of the new year for a lot of people all the time. So as we're starting off in this new season of the OCA, we wanted to make sure we, took a look at what we're trying to do as an organization and try to figure out how to best accomplish some of that, right? So there's been some, big, changes that have happened over the past year, both in the industry as well as in this organization itself, right? So that's kind of the background of some of this conversation is, how do we proceed? How do we develop a strategy to, attract new members, right? How do we the other interesting thing about what's going on at OCAs, we've got all of these projects, some of which are, very active and providing large value to the community. But, we're having a difficult time with the sponsorship side, right? So how do we figure out how to balance that dynamic in the organization as well? Right. Because, we've got hundreds of people participating in all these different things across the organization, but we've only got a small number of sponsors now in the project. And, we lost one of our, to be complete, this is the governing board. So let's be frank, we've lost one of our major sponsors over the past 6 months. IBM's no longer a OCA sponsor. So how do we as the PGB figure out, what are we doing? Are there things we should be changing? Are there ways we should be going and recruiting more? What is the value that we're providing? How do we entice more organizations to support this mission, right? Yeah. So I'll just leave it there. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts. Oh, I see Duncan's got his hand up. I'll go ahead, Duncan.
Yeah. So firstly, I'll get to your point in a second. But to start with, I think Vaughn's point on the users is very crucial. I think that's one of our root problems is the users who benefit the most by it and participate the least in these organizations, basically. So that's one of the things we have to show the value to them and show why it would we do it. But I do think we should do that. OCA a while back tried this idea of basically having a community users group, but it never really panned out. But we might become that. It would be great if we could. I think Jason's point on interop is sort of one of our keys. A vendor agnostic interop is really what we offer, and that's the value we get to the users, which all said and done is a negative to some of the vendors, which is why we maybe don't get sometimes as much as we could, because they lose their lock-in. But my big thing is automation. I think that automation is desperately needed. My other big thing, which I didn't mention in the beginning, was I'm very big in software supply chain, have been for decades, literally. And so I do think there's some opportunities there, particularly the two of them combined. So for the new people on the call who aren't aware of the cybersecurity automation sub-project of the OCA, which is CASP, it runs this thing called the Cybersecurity Automation Village. The next one of which is going to be hosted by AT&T in, I forget the dates now. I think it's January, maybe it's February. It's early next year sometime. And that's probably a good sort of focal area for the different parts of the project. So we could get our act together in the next few months. We probably could use that as a very good forum to try and suck a lot more people in. Because as I mentioned, I'm very active in the supply chain stuff. The supply chain stuff is really hot at the moment. I mean, SBOMorama in Denver next week got capped at the 220 people the CISA would allow in, and there's like 1,000 signed up to listen virtually. I think we have a good opportunity to tie our automation stuff together, and the theme of the village in the first quarter next year is going to be, we've had several villages already. We've sort of evolved from, comply to connect to getting SBOMs basically to threat intelligence was the focus of the last one. And the focus of the next one is going to be, okay, what do you want to do about it? What are the actions you're going to take? Put all this stuff together and let's go action, like actually make somebody safer because you did whatever. And we have some really good use cases that we used last time. So I think if we could play to that really well, if sort of all of the PGB could participate in that, because not all the members of the PGB or companies are that involved in the CASP stuff. You can sort of look at it from your projects or your company's viewpoint of, hey, what can we contribute here? And how can we do this in the spirit of, hey, let's show the IBMs and the AT&Ts and the big user, the US government, the big user community groups, because who will really benefit the most will be the small, startup people, but they're not going to be able to afford to sponsor the OCA. We need sort of those biggies, and we can get them if we get them involved and we show our value. And I think the other second part of that, to Jason's point of, hey, how do we get people to actually be on the PGB? Because you can do everything you need to do for free in the OCA. And that says, I do think we have to eventually get the standards. If we could get some of our stuff to actually make interoperability standards on how to interoperate. We are part of OASIS, so one of OASIS's purposes to make standards. We're sort of in a very unique position there of able to do that. And all said and done, the PGBs would get the final say in everything. So if we do start to get into drafting some standards, I'm pretty sure some of the people who want to say in that standard are going to say, wait a second, I want to vote at the thing on this, and therefore I want to be on the PGB. So I know we've been sort of iffy on standards in the OCA since the beginning. Hey, we just put out our open source. That should be good enough for everybody. We could get the standards, at least on how these things interoperate. I think we'd get more value. And if we could get into standards on how to interoperate supply chain stuff, I think we'd probably get 100 people to sign up tomorrow. Over.
Right, so I'm using the hand because I can't find the button to put the hand up. It seems to be gone from my Zoom interface.
Yeah, they changed it. It's under React now. I took a while to find it.
Oh gosh, I had a look there, but I couldn't see it. Anyhow, so I had a couple of ideas to put out there, just sort of concepts to think about. First of all, I think. And this is coming from a purely business kind of angle. I've been a startup founder for some years, so I think a lot about, how to move the needle on certain things, and I really think it would be helpful to boil it down to to a focus, like something we're focusing on, and I think interoperability is the key. So how can we have as few goals as possible that are basically around interoperability? And then what are the key results or the metrics that would indicate that we're moving towards those goals? So I just want to throw that out there as an idea. I know I mean, it could be something like, user adoption, that we look at how many GitHub downloads. As a really lofty goal, I'd like to propose, and this is from, I'm sure, Duncan, you've been involved in the SBOM community. I noticed when we had our CASP meeting last year in June, we had a small group, maybe 36 people, including the people online. And then the next day at the SBOM meeting, there were 200 people spilling out into the hallway. What happened? Well, they got a signed executive order from the White House saying everyone must use SBOMs. I'd just like to put it out there, like, what would it look like as a goal to get a signed executive order from the White House saying that one of the technologies the OCA develops, it could be CASP, it could be one of the others, is now enshrined in federal regulations that people who fall under that domain are influenced to use that technology. That's just an example of a goal we could aim at, but I'm keen to hear other people's. I just want to say one more thing is to the point about how we encourage sponsorship. I think really, looking at it as really this is beyond participating and using the code and submitting pull requests and all that, which as Duncan mentioned, you can do for free. This is really, it's coming out of your marketing budget. And so what's the ROI on that spend? And, how do you justify that sponsorship? And I think, product placement, opportunities to get mentioned and promoted in different places where you can't get to, I think that's really critical to getting sponsors. I think for a small company like mine, it's a much easier sell because no one's heard of us anyway. So if we get a few mentions here and there, it's a big win. I shouldn't say no one's heard of us, but certainly we're not a titan. For a larger company, like imagine someone who's not one of the tech platforms, but they're big enough to be significant and they're looking to grow market share and increase their influence. I think is a really good look to be involved in OCA because you're effectively saying we are supporting customers, and that's a point of difference between us and the big platform vendor who doesn't want anything to do with this because they want to maintain, a stranglehold on their ecosystem. So yeah, just wanted to throw those ideas out there for discussion or ideas to the floor. But Terence.
Thank you. Kind of on the topic of SBOM and talking about use cases and potential areas for collaboration with industry. One of the things we've been working with some healthcare companies and the health ISAC is around medical devices. And like a simple use case is, when there's vulnerabilities identified in a medical device, like how you inform that. And, like we're used to it on the tech side and that works, okay, at least, but like that doesn't exist like in the medical side. And firstly, for healthcare providers, that's like always their struggle, right? And they're usually not connected machines. They gotta do things manually, right? But even just getting the information to them, there is no standard. It's like not clear what to do. Just the other problem, right? There's only a few medical, you got GE, Siemens, and some other ones, right, that are kind of consolidated around it. But like as a focus use case and a supply chain use case and like something that would really benefit from an open standard that we could probably then pivot to other type of operational security type companies. That might be a good one, especially when we talk about like when I was talking with them, I was like, isn't this something like federal regulation should kind of mandate, to your point, about how do we get some executive orders, right? Like this could be a good one in the sense that, hey, if you're making medical devices, especially ones that have some kind of connectivity, you should be following a standard to share that, and you also be following a standard for disclosure. It's probably very challenging, right? That's probably a difficult one, but I think it's a good one to help the community. I think it'd be a good example use case for some other ones, and maybe that'll help bring in some of the other large providers to support this community.
I'll second that. Obviously, that's one of the ones I'm very active in. I'll even say I consult for the vendor that has currently a lock-in on the healthcare ISAC SBOM management.
Was it one of the two I meant?
Yeah, so I'll speak on this board to this board's fiduciary, not to my person who actually pays me money, because it'll be against actually Cybeats to say, hey, Cybeats has it because they, volunteered to do it and they got picked. But now that they have it, they don't have to share with anyone else. And if they did, they'd share it their way versus their API. There's no sort of standard way to do that sharing. That is one of the things that actually PACE was going to focus on. But again, no one seemed to care. So I'm the only one who's done anything in that. And when we get to that agenda item, literally 2 years ago in this group, the exact use case you're describing was proposed to be part of the focus of this. And so far, I'm the only one who did anything on it. So I'm proposing to actually phase that work out, which maybe we shouldn't do if we really want to do that.
Yeah, and I think we could pull some folks in, like to help there too. Like even if it's just to help ISAC initially. But at least from like a vendor perspective here, as we work with clients too, I can give some gentle nudges. Like, hey, we're interested in solving this problem for the industry, not specific to our platform or any other platform.
And if we did focus on healthcare, automotive, defense, all the others will actually follow. Healthcare does tend to be, which is weird because healthcare tended to be behind in all this stuff. But in this particular area, healthcare is in the lead because of the FDA ruling. I mean, basically there is a regulation, we mentioned before the executive order, to add to Vaughn's point, there's also literally a regulation from the FDA that says, hey, you're going to do this, you have to do it. You want to supply medical devices, you have to do this. And therefore people are paying attention now.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, Duncan. And I actually proposed like a TC on this to Oasis like as well, like a year ago or something. It didn't really go anywhere, but
well, OSIM sort of is that TC now, so
sort of maybe.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
I think we can do everything in it to do the define what it is, but still the interop part of it probably belongs over here.
Yeah. I think the thing with a lot of these efforts is you've really got to have a couple of the major players in whatever you're trying to do at the table. If they're not at the table, then it's just a bunch of people in the room talking, is from my experience, right? And that's, if we can leverage our connections to get some of these players at the table, some of these, then yeah, I think we'd have a real shot.
Well, OSIM has Microsoft, Google, and CISA at the table discussing it. So it's got a bunch of others too, but those three are pretty big players. But again, they're going to focus more on the information model. Once you've extracted the information model of basically what is an SBOM, what do you do with it, and how do you basically how do you play it into PACE? How do you derive the security posture from it and share that with everything else? Obviously, I would argue it should end up in a sticks object somehow about it, but that's just my preference. But that stuff nobody's basically working on that.
No, there needs to be a protocol, and there is, no one's, or API spec with a protocol. Yeah, no one's working on it right now. So every single SBOM system is therefore in a bubble.
Yep.
Yeah,
they
and
didn't exist at all a few years ago, so it's not a super surprise, but it's a big opportunity that if we don't take it soon, someone else is gonna.
Yeah, there's a similar opportunity that I've highlighted a couple of times in Gen AI and cybersecurity, right? You've got all of these different AI agents being developed, or not agents, AI systems, and they don't work together. So we're just building yet again a whole bunch of bubbles, right? Where CrowdStrike's AI doesn't talk to Copilot, doesn't talk to Purple AI, doesn't talk to anybody else, right? And I think that there's a big opportunity in that area. Again, the problem we have right now is the critical mass. Like, I don't think that we don't have the critical mass to get the work started, but if we can get if we can get enough of the critical mass interested in solving that problem, and I think it needs to kind of be forced by some customers, then maybe we can get something going there, right? Like, because, if I was a customer an end user of more than one of these platforms, it would already be becoming a problem, right? Like if I'm a Microsoft customer and a CrowdStrike customer, I'm already up a creek because Charlotte thinks one thing and Copilot thinks another thing, and they don't talk to each other, right? It's just so I think that there's a big opportunity there, but
Eric, you had some ideas around the automotive industry. Keen to hear more about that.
Well, I was actually trying to dovetail on what we were discussing with the healthcare industry and medical devices. And, I don't remember who brought up the point, but I believe it was Duncan said the automotive industry as well. And if we look at things like updates and over-the-air transmission of data, I think that is a valuable market to look at. There's a lot of money in that industry. There's also a lot of risk that, to the best of my knowledge, is not being correctly addressed or addressed at all. Whether it be the PII that the vehicles are storing, read Tesla's security or Sentry mode, where there's actually been cases where the cars are being brought into evidence for crimes because they're capable of watching what's going on around them, all the way down to over-the-air updates, which are becoming more prevalent. You're talking about a multi-ton object traveling at a high velocity that now could potentially have vulnerabilities that could be weaponized, or even if not weaponized, become a danger to the operator if there's some type of malicious code in there. And that's, to me, there's got to be a lot of money there, but also a lot of risk that I'd love to see a way that it be better addressed. And if that tied into the healthcare industry, all the better.
Yeah, I think automotive would be one of the ones where you sort of got to have the players in the room to participate, because they're extremely insular and extremely proprietary. They even keep their SBOMs proprietary. And the guy who runs the automotive ISAC is doing a lot of stuff in supply chain, but they're doing it very privately. Charlie Hart of Hitachi actually runs that group. And I have a connection into it, but getting them to attend here, I actually think doing some work in the healthcare and showing what you could do would then get them to watch what we're doing. But I think just saying, hey, we want to work in this area, come work with us, they'll say, no, we got our private groups that do this. We don't do this stuff in public.
That makes a lot of I'm sadly not even slightly surprised by that. It's just, if maybe we could topple a domino and start having more focus on it, there might become a lot more interest. And
agree.
Something else to consider, and so I'm channeling a bit of Brett Jordan here. I'm sure if he was here, he'd want to talk about edge computing and 6G mobile networks, and the fact that we're now going to, well, in the near future, there'll be billions of devices at the edge doing all kinds of things, probably with AI agents embedded in them, and they'll mostly be running insecurely unless we have some way of managing those at scale. So that's maybe another. I'm not sure where it fits with all this, but it's another consideration. Sort of looking forward is the explosion of sheer number of devices.
So Vaughn and Jason, to both your points, sort of connect them together. What do we have that we in the room can do that suck either of those in?
Well, if you look at the assets that the OCA has in this commons, it's really that the intellectual property, I think, is mostly around specs and reference implementation of specs. Like that's from my perspective. So when I look at Stick Shifter, there's a whole lot of software written. It's obviously a very useful utility or set of utilities. But what it comes down to is it's really a reference implementation of the Sticks patterning library and some other related. It's very strongly, obviously, tied with Sticks, and I think that's a key strength, and that's maybe something that hasn't been done before. So if you start with open specs and say these are already in the commons, how do we build a reference implementation of that so that we can spread this and ensure that as many people as possible are using it in their projects. I think that's probably the way to get this out there. And I think that there's the concept in open source teams of building in public. Even commercial open source, you build in public, which encourages more people. It gives more people assurance that you're building something they can use. So maybe that's another principle to think about. And you can achieve a lot, I think, with a relatively small group if incentives are aligned and you're able to build something that's in public that others can use. But I'm actually keen to hear from David, because I think is OpenXDR, is that actually open source? Is there public specs available that are sort of could be part of a common intellectual property?
Yeah, I heard carefully what you said, and this is the goal of this project. We have in mind really to bring some specs. I'm thinking about let's say the way to design an API that would make sense, let's say, to being implemented for let's say a security analytics engine or a security operation platform. And this API would make sense, let's say, to be able to have the technologies to communicate to this central point. So this is about specs. This is a way, let's say, to organize the flow, to organize the communication between security components. And this can be then implemented whatever the editor will want to do. But this way, you propose something in the way you facilitate the interoperability between, let's say, I will name front-end components and back-end components. This is the goal. And behind this API specification, you have other content that would make sense in this way to organize better the flow of communication between these technologies on CTI distribution, dissemination, on the way, let's say, to have a better ability to ingest some flows of data, some events coming from some technologies, and the way to react and to engage this technology on the next step of your detection workflow. All these different part of the jobs are included in this project, and I'm really sad that we do not achieve, let's say, to progress better on this project. And I've discussed this several times with Claudia and also Jason. The point is that for me, what is important is that we bring on the table, let's say, the first steps of these pillars. If there is nothing, it won't be understood correctly by the community. So this is why it takes time, because we want to have sufficient content before talking about it and before engaging the community. I'm not sure this really answers your question.
Yeah, no, it's no, I'd certainly like to. Yeah, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about OpenXDR. It's not one I've been tracking too closely, but yeah, I'd certainly be keen to have an update on where you think it can do better, like whether you need more people involved.
Yeah, I think OpenXDR is really joining the goal of OCA, let's say, to develop better interoperability between products and components. It's really aligned with that. It's really a project that intends, let's say, to do that at scale between different components when it's related to detection and reaction. It's really aligned with that, but it does not go fast enough.
I agree with what Vaughn's saying. I do think that like it might be good to, I don't know about just give an update, but like update and try to get any kind of a working group together to Vic, because I think that there might be people who can come in and help accelerate, right? But I don't think we've really tried to push on that at all. To see if we can get some others to come in and help you.
Yeah, we also had this discussion with Vasileios. I think we could do something, let's say, together with different people, let's say, leading this project and to engage with the community, to organize the first events. So yeah, my goal. I know that I've said that several times, but I intend, let's say, to really give more of my time on this project on next months, and really to have a real progress being visible until the end of this year. So I've started, let's say, to engage some resources internally. I mean, in Sequoia. But once again, maybe this is my philosophy and my background. I want something minimum being visible before engaging the community to say, okay, look at this. We have something that can be used, let's say, as a first step, and then we propose you, let's say, to continue to create the next steps on this tier.
So, David, I'll say I've been involved in open source since 2000, and I have many times seen your statement to be the downfall of a project. In other words, people don't let perfection be the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
No one wants to expose their, hey, this isn't clean enough yet. This isn't nice enough yet. I got these other 3 features I got to add in yet. So I'm not quite ready to give it to everybody. And 3 years pass and you still haven't put it out. The whole purpose of open source is to get everybody to help you. You literally can start with nothing. Now, we've had parts of this project, parts of OCA actually start with nothing and not actually go very far. So it is true, you got to have somebody work on it. But if you did your work, for lack of a better term, in public, so put out whatever you got, and whatever changes you're going to make over the next month, just do them as, GitHub changes to the public version, as opposed to getting it all nice inside before you do it outside. Because there's a sort of huge hump getting over that initial thing out there. There's a hump because probably you have to go through your lawyers and you got to make business decisions, you got to do a bunch of junk like that. But the bigger hump in my mind over literally years and years of doing this has been that, no, I don't want to show anybody yet because I haven't finished, or it looks cruddy or something. And you got to get over that or it'll be worse, is my opinion.
Cool. I found the raise hand button, so I'm just doing that. I was going to say, I think another way to look at how do you get more people involved or get momentum behind one of these ideas. I mean, at the moment, we're in this room as vendors talking about who's willing to help contribute to an effort. What about on the customer side? So a bit of demand generation. And the first thing that springs to mind, and Duncan, maybe this is more something you can speak to. I mean, there's the SBOM example. Clearly, we've got some customer demand there, a lot of it. The other one that I think seems to have some traction is OpenC2. So I believe certain agencies with 3-letter acronyms are now quite interested in seeing what can the vendor community come up with that meets the OpenC2 spec. Because if they can, we'd like to use that, because now we have a standardized way of issuing commands to all of your technology. So maybe that's another way to look at it, is finding a big corporate, someone outside the cyber space, but someone who's a consumer, a large consumer of cyber technology, maybe one of the, the large banks. What would they like to see vendors provide in the way of interfaces that they can more easily utilize those products? I mean, Duncan, has that been your experience with OpenC2?
Well, see, OpenC2 is one of those sort of caught in the everybody wants it, but no one wants to work on it. Now, I actually got some emails from Cisco this morning, literally, on asking some questions because they're actually implementing in something. And I know you're implementing in something. And I should have actually put you in contact with Jody, because she's who sent me the email on, hey, who else is doing this stuff to do it? I put her in contact with the NSA guys, but unfortunately, Mike's over in Geneva right now, literally this morning, fighting with the Russians over getting sticks made a standard, because for some reason, neither the Russians nor the Iranians want sticks to become a standard. What a weird coincidence. But so I know he couldn't respond to her today, but I'll actually tie you into that afterwards. But so it's a little bit of a chicken and egg. The users all want to benefit. You know, AT&T wants it, some other ones want it, NSA wants it, DoD wants it. Senior DoD officials have actually said, hey, we're going to put it in our standards, but they're running into the issue of, hey, but we need actually, you know, to Jason's point earlier, you need some of the people who actually do it in the room, because you can't, you know, they can just go ahead and create a standard out of whole cloth and make people follow, but it's not going to be right if you don't actually have the Ciscos and the everybody else of the world that they're going to implement it, at least saying, hey, here's what we don't like about it. Can't you make it this way? So we've been going way slower than I would have, you know, preferred on that. I am sort of hoping the related to the supply chain stuff is what's going to actually kickstart that. And I'm also hopeful that because now that we're getting to sort of the action stage in the upcoming CASP village, so DoD is very hopeful that that will tease out of the woodwork all the, hey, we told you to do, you know, firewalls this way. It'll get the firewall vendors to say, no, we don't like it, do it this way. Well, all right, good, show up the standards body and argue that or whatever. But that one's one we actually have gotten through. But sort of the rest of, particularly how it ties in with some of the things, you know, most of the actions, you know, like we used Olympic Destroyer as the, you know, the Russian hack of the Seoul Olympics as the data for the last village. And most of the actions you'd actually take to respond to that aren't going to be you know, send a drop packets command to a firewall. They're fancier, for lack of a better term. And so getting into some of that meat is really sort of the hope of the upcoming village. So I'm hoping we're going to actually make the turn, you know, this coming spring to be at the point of, hey, the new version, you know, whatever comes out of that, I'm sure we'll have to make changes. I doubt we did it all right. And I'm sure we'll have to make some changes. My hope is coming out of that, though, will be the, hey, now let's go actually start doing it. So I'm still hopeful we're going to get to the point you think we're already at, but I don't think we're actually at it yet.
All right. Well, I think you've just revealed the reason why the Russians won't agree to anything, because they're being used as they're actually the case study in question.
Yes. By the way, we did have to remove that. The standard actually had that in it, and we had to remove it. It also had a Chinese example that we had to remove. That in the future, when writing standards, probably don't actually call out other people if they're going to object to it.
In Australia, we always use as our adversary the name of a fictitious country with, you know, weapon systems that look very similar to our actual adversaries. But
we used to use that in we used Cubicon and Xanadu in the intelligence community to basically, you could do the correlation yourself. But yes.
Yep. Yeah. So on the OpenC2 side, I mean, it sounds like there's demand from the government. I'm sure there's vendors who are queuing up to say, I'll build this if there's actually a use case for it. But is it the case that the equipment makers haven't built OpenC2 APIs into their systems? And I wonder if this is a case for something like
the biggest take to date, weirdly enough, has actually been from the user side. There was a MSS, a managed security service supplier in England, that actually switched over to using OpenC2, even though none of their vendors did. And they got a 20% improvement in their SOC efficiency because they didn't, you know, because they had the Cisco guy and the vArmor guy, and you know, they had 17 firewalls. And they could actually all talk to each other and actually use each other's stuff through OpenC2, even though they were doing it manually. It still made, you know, they wrote scripts and stuff to do it, but none of the vendors had the interface, but they still got the SOC efficiency. I should have mentioned that. That's the one sort of clear cut example we do have of why everybody wants it. It's just we haven't crossed the line.
Okay, so it sounds like almost like an OpenC2 shifter that will translate OpenC2 commands into the
Basically, we
device.
need more of them. Yes, that's exactly. In fact, if this group made OpenC2 shifters, we'd be died and gone to heaven.
I think we've just set a new target. Not that we need more goals to pursue, but yeah. All right. Well, I think there's a lot of ideas there to consider. Does anyone have anything else on that topic of the participation? I think we touched on sponsorship as well. And yeah, again, just wanted to posit the idea that it's like, you know, if this is if sponsorship is a marketing exercise, then I think providing marketing opportunities, providing ROI is probably the best focus to draw more sponsors in. Certainly that's what, you know, as a company founder and CEO, that's certainly how I think. And then the other topic, and I think this is perhaps influenced through the lens of that whole sponsorship dilemma, is what's the future of OCA? So can it remain in its current governance structure? You know, do we feel that you know, cost constraints or other, factors might lend towards better being implemented as a technical committee. So just keen to hear views on that. I'll be honest, I haven't seen the profit and loss statement or the cash flow, the balance sheet. I couldn't tell you what commercial constraints we have. But I think Jason might be a bit closer to, and Claudia certainly knows a bit about that. So yeah, just keen to throw that out there, just for a general discussion today of, in the time we have remaining, what do people think about the future of the governance structure?
Well, I'll chime in. As if it was a TC, TCs tend to be more focused. One advantage of OCA is it sort of looks across the TCs and other people's standards and is more on the interoperability and what do we do to glue them together. And so the shifter concepts, hey, yeah, we have the standard, but we don't have the gear that actually talks to it. So how do we make these interfaces? So I'm still hopeful OCA has a future, but I do know from having previous looks at the internal finances, OASIS is a nonprofit. It's not driven by business needs. It's driven by very clear cut, hey, we want to achieve objectives that help our members, and we gotta pay for the support we give. Claudia's on the call and she costs money. There's a certain sort of base you gotta get up to. That we were up to, that we aren't up to anymore, would be my interpretation of what Jason said. And that if there's a hope for lack of a better term, bringing in more than we spend, then we should continue. And if there's no hope for that, then we should, go away. And I think the community I think the world would be less safe if we went away. I think the world will be safer if we stayed around. But that means someone's got to cough up something, which means we have to come up with, hey, how do we just get more involved? I'll have to say one of the things I'm hopeful about is just, hey, this call has more people on it than we ever had in the past, because people actually showed up for once. So I think there's a hope that we can actually, I think we should make another run at it. If we 6 months from now are still at the, whatever state, then maybe we do have to fold. But I personally would prefer to go along the lines we're, going along, but with us as a group focusing on, hey, what do we do to keep us alive? Basically, what do we do to get people involved and get more involved at the grassroots level, but more importantly, more involved at the people who fork up money. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to misinterpret anything either. Like, there's no dire situation or anything going on like that. It's just kind of more of a question, about long term. And I don't think we need to make any kind of decisions right now. It's more of I think as we proceed over the next 6 months, right? As we proceed over the next 6 months, attempt to recruit some more involvement, engagement, get some more high profile projects to get that engagement going. It is something to think about, right? Because if the thing is that what happens in a lot of standards work, as we've all experienced over our careers, right, is there's this natural cycle to a lot of this work, and it has the peaks and then it goes down and it goes back up. So the question we've got to kind of be looking at is, are we going to be doing another peak, or are we kind of going into maintenance mode with some of this? And if we're doing that, what does that look like? Right. So, again, I don't think there's any decision right now that we have to be worried about, but it is something to be thinking about over the next year, because things have slowed down quite a bit, and maybe there'll be a huge change. We don't know. Right? Hopefully that's what we're all gonna be pushing for. But if over the next 6 months we just see kind of a continued slow burn on some of these projects, it's something I think realistically we've got to look at. So I don't know if there's any other thoughts or comments we got before close.
I think Claudia had one.
Just briefly to add to what Jason just said. So from our side, there is no need to change anything right now. So there's no immediate need for this. It's good to have an eye on the options and kind of think about it. but there's no like urgency right now. Just to make that clear. And I wanted to add that my colleague Holly, who worked with Carol on our biz dev team, and some of you might have met her at Black Hat, perhaps. She wants to make time to join these calls. So I'm going to invite her. So if there's, and I will share the discussion we had today with her as well. Just wanted to mention that.
That's a good point, because her helping us grow this group would help us a lot. Because that's sort of, she'd know what,
Exactly.
like, even if we talk somebody into joining, they'd still have to work with her to actually do it. So that would be
Right.
great.
Yeah.
All right, and Oddcast, just quickly, you had a question about AI.
Yes, I was just asking more onto the side of like how, so how we are like progressing things on the AI side. Do we have any projects around it? I know AI is lately been too much, and there are so many projects and integration into the companies. But how can we like secure things around it? How do we know like it's not being exploited? How like what can be done around it, or how it can be secured, or if any framework can be created around it?
The
I
quick
did
answer is
mention at
none
the
at the
start of
moment,
the,
but
oh,
yeah.
go
I was
ahead,
gonna say
Doug.
the quick answer is none at the moment, but Jason and Vaughn both said it's an area we probably should be trying to figure out what to do with.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, so I mean, I'd be very interested in starting an effort around, sharing, having cybersecurity Gen AI systems work together and developing a standard with that. I know that my company would be interested in that. Um, if we can get like a critical mass of at least people in the OCA together, interested in starting that work, then that is something that probably Holly and Claudia and the Oasis team can take out, and run some business development around and use that to recruit. So, I mean, Uktarsh, like I'm really interested in that idea. I think if we, I don't know if anybody else in the PGB is interested in that. If they are, maybe we can reach out after the call and, put out an internal call in the OCA to see if anybody else in the OCA community wants to get that going. I'm talking specifically about the thing that I'm really interested in is, as I said, developing, and there's technology that already kind of exists in here, but it's like codifying and creating this standard way for different cybersecurity AI systems to talk to each other so that, all these different things can interoperate with each other. Because right now they're all siloed, right?
Exactly.
That's
Right.
something I think is going to be very important. But
Yeah, I've recently heard that I think described as agentic security, but I might be taking that term out of context. But
yeah, agentic is a little bit different. That's what we're focused on, right? So agentic AI is when it's less kind of the co-pilot and it's more like, okay, it's an agent, it's like a person. Like you go and give it the task and it actually goes and does that task, comes back 4 hours later and said, I did that, right? That's an agent. I mean, that would be another really interesting thing, but there's less people doing that right now. I'm more interested in even just the very basics of having these systems be able to talk to each other. Like, my example, and I'm not trying to pick on Microsoft or CrowdStrike, I'm just using because they're big names. And the likelihood of this situation is very high, right? If you're a customer and you have CrowdStrike and then you have Azure, Copilot and Charlotte do not talk to each other. Right? So how are you supposed to how are you supposed to have an AI that can do anything real? They're just building more bubbles, right? So
yeah, all right. Well, I think this is probably a good topic for another day. Yeah, we are out
yeah,
of
it's
time.
really late for you.
Yeah, I'm going to turn into a pumpkin very soon. It's just gone after midnight. So, thank you everybody for coming. And yeah, I think it's been a great meeting. I really hope we can maintain this same momentum as the fall or spring continues. And yeah, I guess let's keep it going on Slack if people have further discussions over the coming days. We're all in the OCA PGB Slack channel, so yeah, please keep the ideas coming.
Thank you, everyone.
For
Thanks,
sure.
Vaughn.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
All right, see ya.